Welcome CSE 103 to exercise 15 for fall 2020. This is CodePen Practice, and it's just a quick activity just to verify that you created your CodePen account and just to start off doing a little bit of HTML and CSS and being able to turn it in. That's all we're going to do here, so this will be very simple, and you're just going to have to log into your account unless you're still in it, but I'm going to log in, and I'm going to use the account I created in the video, which was from a year ago. And when I log in, it may show previous pens, it may show nothing. This is one I did last spring. This is one I just practiced now just to make sure I follow the right steps when we do it. You may be seeing a pen, but one thing I want to show you, because when I saw the older video and I came in here, it always changes a little bit. So I just want to show you something. When you go into settings, and remember there's two settings. There's a settings that'll show up here in the corner once you're in your pens. That's for your pen, but the general settings down here, they changed a little bit. So I just want to point that out, that they're kind of off to the side now. It's a little bit different layout, but if you go to editor preferences, everything's pretty much the same. It just looks a little different. I just want to point out that here I have Twilight theme. There I have my font and font size. I have code indentation. I didn't tell you anything about that. I could just leave it on spaces for now. Auto update preview is on right now. And autocomplete, that was the thing that I said was important that you do that. And Emmet is active, so it's green, it's active. It's over to the left, but it's active. So we're going to use Emmet in this first little practice exercise. But I just wanted to point this out because it looks a little different than it does on the previous video. And I'm going to hit my back button right now, because I didn't really change anything. And what I'm going to do next is create a new pen. Now they have a pen thing over here. I'm going to go right here and create new pen. And the first thing I'll do is give it a name. So that means you have to go on the little pen here. So I'm going to click on the pen. I'll just call it 15 dash, I'll just say CP for CodePen, and I'll put practice, because that's all we're doing. And you could put your last name on it if you want. I'm just going to put FA20, and I guess I'll put my last name because I think I have another one called FA20. And I'll put my last name first initial here. You don't have to put FA20, that's just so I remember it. And sometimes I put a V here when I record a video. But anyway, do that and then hit enter, give it a name, and that'll save it. That'll just be like your repels were with Replit and things like that. Now I have my settings so that this is over on the left side. If you ever want to change that, just go to change view. So if it's showing up like this right now and you don't want it like that, just go to change view and put it on the left side. All right, and also be aware there is a save button here. It will autosave, but they do have a save button, which we'll try to use. And you might see little ads down here, probably because it's the free version, but those aren't bad in terms of ads, so you can X out of that. And make sure you verified your account, because we're going to use something called assets that's real small down here, but if you didn't verify your account, you won't see assets down here. So what we're going to do first, real basic stuff, and we're going to use our shortcuts, which is really cool, because you don't have to even type HTML. You could just type H1. I'm going to type H1 and then hit your tab key. Look at that, it just made 2 HTML tags. And what you're going to put in here is just put hello from CodePen. You can put an exclamation point if you want. And when you do this, what that is, that's called a heading 1. That's an HTML element. This whole thing is an element, the H1 element, and this is a tag, opening tag and a closing tag. That's saying where the H1 opens and where it closes. So there could be something else after it, which we'll put after it. And basically what it does is it just makes it big and bold. And there's certain default sizes, but you don't have to worry about that for now. But what I'm going to put next is an H2. So I'm just going to hit return here in my HTML coding area, and I'll put H2, and I'll hit tab. Now, what this tab is doing is making a shortcut so I can do these tags, because sometimes this is a pain to do all these less than, greater than signs and slashes and all that. But this is a heading 2, which actually is the smaller. So heading 1 is the biggest heading, H2 is a smaller, and I'm just going to put CSC 103, and I'll just put fall 2020. And that's all I'll put in there. I'll put a space in there. And you can see what that did. It's still bold, but it's a little bit smaller. So they go from H1 to H6. H1 is the biggest, H6 is the smallest, and they're kind of heading structure that they have created in HTML. And that's all you have to do right now. And then I'm just going to put a paragraph in here, and that's a P tag. So you just have to hit P and hit tab. And in between these tags, where the paragraph starts and where the paragraph ends, I'm just going to type this as a paragraph. Again, this is just practice, so we're not doing anything exciting here. This is a paragraph, and you can put a period, and that's it. And here's a paragraph, and that's basically the default size of the body copy. It looks a little small in here right now. I'll have to check my browser settings, but usually it's like 16 pixels is the size they use, similar to like 12 point in Word, something like that. But that's the body copy. And I'll just make another one. Now, if I keep typing inside there, it'll be part of one paragraph, but I'm going to make another one just so you can see what two paragraphs look like. I'll just hit return and type a P and hit tab. Now, this is another paragraph, and I'm just going to put this as another paragraph. And what happens when you make another paragraph, it actually puts default space in between these. So you can see there's default space above and below these things. So there's going to be some settings where we can take that out. But for now, there's kind of a default spacing where you hit return, just like if you're in Word and you hit return, sometimes if you don't change your settings, it'll put extra space in there. So that's what happens with paragraphs, so that there's space between paragraphs when you actually work. Now, these are one-line paragraphs. It's still a paragraph, but it's just one line. So it doesn't really look like a paragraph, it looks like a line, but it's a paragraph. You know why? Because that thing says it's a paragraph. Now, what we're going to do next is just put a picture in here, and we're going to put an image. So I'm going to hit return or enter, and it's actually going to use something called an image element. Now, notice that all of the elements we have so far have opening and closing tags. Opening H1, closing H1 with the slash. Opening H2, closing. Opening P, closing. Now, there are some elements that don't always have a closing tag, like a line break or an image, and that's what we're going to put in as an image, but we don't even have to put the image element in right now. We're actually going to copy that, and they have something built in the CodePen, so you could just go down to Assets. It's down here in the bottom. If you just click on here and go to Photos, and I'm just going to search for something fall. So they have a search here, and I'll just choose fall because it's fall right now, and you'll see some fall pictures, and you'll see pumpkins and things like that, and I'm just going to choose this pumpkin thing here, and now I chose it, but I also want to use this drop down, and I'm going to use the one that says copy as image small. So that means it's going to create the image tag, because we didn't create an image tag over here. So this will bring it in for us, and we'll just make it small. We don't need it real big right now. So copy as image small. So I'm just going to do that. Now, when I copy it, that's all it means is it copies it. It copies it to the clipboard. So then I can X out of here. And then when I go here, I could paste it. I could do Command V or Control V if you're on Windows and paste it. Now, let me make this a little bit bigger, and let me actually collapse this. They have minimized JavaScript editor. So let me minimize that, and I'll even make this CSS smaller. So I have more room here. And that's what I have so far. And you can see this is a very long URL. URL is the address. That's the thing that shows up here. It's a real long URL. And let me just point this out. This is an image element. And notice it has image, and there's no greater than sign here. It actually has the greater than sign at the end. So this is all one tag. It's an element, but it doesn't have a closing tag. You don't have to put where an image starts and where an image ends. It's basically all inside the one tag. So this is an image element, but what it has in here that we haven't used so far is a source attribute. This is called an attribute. And typically when you have an attribute, it'll say something equals. And it might have like href equals if it's a hyperlink, but this says source, src equals, and then the link or the source of this picture is there. So it's somewhere on the web, and it's in quotes. Typically you have to put it in quotes. Now they're using single quotes, although we can use double quotes if we want, but that's the source, and it's a real long URL for now. And they also have a thing here called alt. Now there's an alt attribute, and it says equals, and it has a quote, and there's nothing in there. And alt can be used for screen readers, or if your image doesn't load. It's often used for addressing disabilities and things like that. So if an image doesn't load, or if a screen reader needs to know what this thing is, you could just say pumpkin pick. That's all you need. It doesn't have to be real formal, anything like that. I'll just type in pumpkin pick. So a screen reader will just say that that's a pumpkin pick. And you won't see it unless the image doesn't load for some reason, but that's it. And I'm going to hit save here, just so I'm kind of updating what I did. And that's some basic HTML. That's all there is. Now, these aren't hyperlinked or anything. Nothing we're clicking on right now actually links to anything else, which we'll do in our next exercise, but we just wanted to get started. So we have an H1 element, an H2 element, a paragraph element, two paragraph elements, and an image element. That's all we have as far as HTML. And they're just structure. Notice there's no real kind of styling going on here. Now let's use CSS for that. CSS is a whole other scripting language, and we're going to do it right in here. And what I'll do is just change the color of this thing. Now you can do CSS within here, but it gets real kind of messy because then you have CSS inside of HTML tags and things like that, and it's really not the best thing to do. So we're going to do it out here. That's what's nice about CodePen. And what I'll do is just target the H1. I'm going to be like, hey, H1, you're going to be a orangey color. So to target H1, I just have to type H1. Now I don't have to put the less than or greater than signs. I just have to say H1 and then a space, and then I'm just going to make a curly bracket or a curly brace facing to the right. Just going to hold shift and click on the curly brace, which is right next to the P on my keyboard. It'll actually make a pair. Now, right now when it's making a pair, I'm actually going to hit enter so that the next one drops a line, and it actually drops a whole line and leaves my cursor in between. And that's the way CSS should look, because it's easy to read like that. And a lot of programming languages that use curly braces actually format things like that. So what we're going to put in here is we're going to put in the CSS style. And this H1, that's targeting the H1 tag. That's actually called the selector. So that's selecting what you want to change. And this whole thing is called a declaration block. And we're going to put a CSS declaration in there. Sometimes we just call them styles. But if you actually want to know the official stuff, if you go to W3 Schools, you can use this for HTML and CSS. And we will. If you go to syntax CSS, you'll see that this is a selector, this is the declaration, and then we're going to have property value. Just like in HTML, we have attribute value. They call them properties in here. And we don't use quotes in here. And there's colons, there's semicolons, so it's a little bit like a programming language, sort of. But we'll talk more about that. But if you want to check out anything about CSS or HTML, W3 Schools is a great site to visit, and we'll use that for a lot of things. They even have Python and PHP, all kinds of stuff here. So it's a nice resource site. And let's go back to CodePen. Again, that's our selector. This is our declaration block, and let's put something in there. We're just going to change the color, and it's actually just color. And you'll see that you'll have little hints coming up there if you turn that on in your settings. And we're just going to use color right now and a colon. That's the way we do it. We don't do an equal sign or anything like that. HTML uses equals and quotes. We're just going to put a colon. And you could put a space or not put a space. And you could put a hex color here if you want. Or if you go to assets, you can just go find a color. I'll just go to assets and go into colors. And I'll just look for a dark orange color. Very pumpkin-y color. There's a brownish one. This one's okay. I'll use that. And what you do when you click on these, it just says copy to clipboard. So it just copies it to the clipboard. You don't even have to do Control-C or anything. It already does it. It copies to the clipboard. And then when you go here, you could just paste and do Control-V or Command-V, and that's it. And when you're done, you can put a semicolon. You should do this, especially if you have multiple declarations or styles that you're going to put in here. You want to put a semicolon to end it. It may not look very different if you forget to do it with just one, but if you do more than one, it's going to be a problem. So the semicolon ends it. A colon actually introduces the value that's going to be here. So this is the property, this is the value. It uses a colon here, and a semicolon ends it. So it just made that orange. So you could change anything you want here. Now this is going to be a little weird because I'm going to target body. And you might say, well, where's the body tag? We don't have a body tag. Well, in CodePen, we don't have to do that because it uses snippets of HTML, but there actually is a body that's creating this whole background of white. So if you wanted to change that, if you wanted to change the background color of your page, we could target the body. Even though it's not showing here, in regular HTML editing, you'd have to make sure that you have a body tag, but in here, we don't have to do that, but that's what we're targeting, the body. And I'll do the same thing. I'll put a opening and closing curly brace. Just when it does one, it does two, and I'll hit enter, and I'll do something called background color, and I'll just start typing background, and background color comes up here. That way I don't have to type it. And I'm going to put my colon right away so I don't forget. And you could put a space because it looks better with a space. And then I'll find a background color. Now, if you don't know them by heart, just go to assets, and this time I'll look for a real light kind of mauvey, fallish looking background. There's a nice one there. And it just copies it to your clipboard. So you can just X out of here once you click on it. And then just go right here and paste it. And put a semicolon. And there it is. Now it has a nice mauvey kind of background. It actually makes it blend in a little. And here's something else you can do just to finish this off. We're going to go back to targeting something we actually have. So if you go after this one, and you can move this up a little bit. I'm going to go after this one, hit return or enter. And I'm going to target my image element. So I'm just going to type IMG and a space. You have to put a space here. And then put your curly braces and hit enter again. so they move on separate lines. Now, if you didn't do that, it'll still work. You can have them on the same line, but it just looks better when you do that. And we're going to put a declaration here for this. We're going to put a border on here. And if you're using these colors, now you might have used a different image or different color or whatever, but I'm going to use white because white will make it kind of pop from that background. And I'm just going to put border. Now, you might not know what border does because you'll see all these different border things. And we're just going to combine a couple things for the border. And I'll just do border. And we're going to put 3 values here. They won't be separated by commas. So I'm just going to put a color, and I'll just do $FFF. That'll be white. And then a space. That's all you need is a space. You don't need a comma. So it's going to be white. And then I'm going to put a style. I'm going to put a style, and the style is just going to be solid. I'm just going to make a solid border right now. And you can see there's one there. Now, we also want to put a thickness. So I'll put 5 pixels for now. Now, you do have to put a unit here, so that's why I'm putting px. Px is for pixels. Now, you could use other units, but I'm going to do that. And then I'll put a semicolon. So that's it. I'm going to put my 3 values there for the border attribute, and I'm targeting image. Now, remember, if you spell image wrong, if you go, oh, I think it's imj, it won't know what you're talking about. So you make sure that you have to target the right thing. It has to be the img element, and there has to be an img element there. You know, for this one, if I was like, oh, it's h3. Well, if it's h3, it doesn't work because there's no h3 up there. And it doesn't see it, so it's not changing that thing. You have to change the h1. Now, also, by that thinking, you might say, well, how does it know to do the background body? It's just kind of inherent. And actually, let me show you something. If I right-click on here, and you could do this, if you right-click anywhere on here, and I'm in Chrome right now, and you do inspect, you'll actually see a body tag. You'll see a body there, and if I click on it, it's showing my background color. So it's actually there. So when it generates this, it actually is making a body tag, even though you don't have to type it in. It's inherently there, and that's just part of the way CodePen works. Now, if you build a web page, you're going to have to put the body tag, but it is there, and there's the color. So it's actually showing up in my browser, so there's the color. So the body tag is getting written in there. All the HTML is getting written in there. It's just we don't have to write it. It's just showing us the different part. There's my P tag, there's the other P tag, and it's showing me, if I click on this P tag, it's showing me different things about it. And it's not putting a color because I didn't give it a color. So that's just some things in HTML and CSS. Now I'm going to X out of here. Now you could do this for anything. This isn't just for CodePen. You can inspect any web page that you go to, and you'll see this kind of stuff. So I'm going to X out of here right now. That's just your browser. That's built into your browser to do that. But our HTML we wrote in here, again, H1, H2, 2 paragraphs. Here's an image. We put a border on it. We put a background color, and we put a color on our heading. And that's all you really have to do for this exercise. Just a little practice, and that's it. Now, you could hit save again. Make sure you do that, although it does have an autosave. But hit save, and then when you want to share this, I just want to point out they have share at the bottom. And if you go to share, it says share on Twitter. It says whatever. All you want to do is copy link. Now, another thing you can do, if you just copy link, it'll just copy the link. Another thing you can do, you can go here. You can actually right-click on here, and this may be the best thing to do. Right-click on here and do copy link address. That's the link address. You're not going to save link as, you're not going to copy, you're just going to copy link address. And then when you go back to my Warren, and then I'll have to log in again. All right, so when you go into coursework, look for Unit 12. And there it is, CodePen Account and Practice. Just click on the link. And I'm going to add a comment. And I'll just click on Insert Link, and I'll paste it. And I'll make sure I choose New Window for Target. And I'll hit OK. And I'll hit Save. And I could even just check it out to make sure it works. I could click on here, and just to make sure it shows your pen, and there it is. And that way I'll be able to see it. And just like Replit, I'll be able to see your account too, so I could go in there. So if you screw up the URL or something, I could go in and see all your pens. And so again, if you don't do something, don't just send me a bad URL and say, oh yeah, I did it, because I could go in there and see all your pens. So make sure you do it if you're gonna send me that, because I'll see all your stuff in there. So that's it. So that thing works okay. So I just wanted to make sure that works. So that's all you have to do, and make sure it looks something like that. It has your username in there, and it says pen, and then it might have some random letters or something in there. And then that's all you have to do. If you go back here, you can log out, or you could just X out of it, or whatever you have to do. You could just close out of it, and you don't have to do anything else. Just make sure you saved it last time, and that's all you have to do. And that's CodePen Practice, exercise 15. And we're going to do some more with CodePen, a little bit more with HTML, CSS, and eventually JavaScript too. So hopefully you enjoyed getting started off with CodePen.